Thank you, and again, welcome to Cleveland, welcome to SAA and our annual meeting, and most of all, welcome to our celebration of the many ways in which we've spent a year living dangerously for archives. Throughout this conference, whether it's in sessions and meetings, where we draw attention to the value of archives, the stories about archives we tell to each other, the stickers, the lanyards, the ribbons that we wear, so many of you have been demonstrating that indeed archives do change lives. As we spend the next 3 days together, I hope you find inspiration in the plethora of ideas that we're going to communicate about the contributions and importance of the work of archivists. I hope our time together here in Cleveland will remind us all of how very good it is to be archivists, and that we will all be able to be inspired and energized even further to raise awareness of the essential contributions of our profession. Truly, my heartfelt thanks to all of you who've been my good friends and companions in the journey this year. I would like first to acknowledge the amazing, amazing program committee that has found new ways to respond to concern our membership that we needed to do SAA, to do our program in different ways. So the incredible work they've done to bring pop-up sessions, different formats, to bring us into different ways of communicating with each other deserves tremendous amounts of credit. So let me simply acknowledge their immense amounts of work and their incredible constancy and creativity. Co-chairs, and if you would all please stand up, co-chairs Lynn Eaton of James Madison University and Carl Van Ness of the University of Florida, Sharmila Bhatia of the National Archives at College Park, Rebecca Bissonette of the Walter Reuther Library at Wayne State, Brett Carnell from the Library of Congress, Ellen Engseth from the University of Minnesota, Natalia Fernandez from Oregon State University, Kimberly Sims from the College of William and Mary, Jennifer Graham from Wisconsin Historical Society, name changes, get me, Joshua Youngblood from the University of Arkansas Libraries. So please join me in thanking these people for the immense work they've done. Thank you, and it has been an incredible accomplishment. I can't thank you all enough. During the past year, we've all learned so much about Cleveland beyond LeBron and where he is this week, and the actually wonderful things he has learned to do as he's grown up. Thanks to the relentless efforts of our host committee, we've learned tremendous amounts about this amazing city. The committee's blog has brought to us the many treats that Cleveland has to offer, from the amazing cultural heritage institutions to the delights of the various neighborhoods. From its first-class cuisine, you should get the Urban Farmer Cocktail number 3 if you're down there. From its first-class cuisine to food trucks and breweries. Who knew, for example, oh, this is a great one, beer-based donuts. The only thing beyond bacon donuts I can think of. Cleveland has it all, and the host committee has told us all about it. Our eternal thanks to the following members of the 2015 host committee, and again, please stand up and be recognized. Co-chairs Janet Carlton of Ohio University and Jenny Thomas of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Leslie Cade from Cleveland Museum of Art, Jillian Carney from Ohio History Connection, Ann Kyler Salsich from Oberlin College Archives, Ronald Davidson from Sandusky Library, Jeremy Theodore from Cleveland Indians, Rita Knight Gray, Nicole LaFlemme from the J.M. Smucker Company, Angela Manella from Cuyahoga Community College, Lisa Rickey from Wright State University, Jill Tatum from Case Western, and Judith Weiner from the Ohio State University. Please, again, join me in thanking them for their amazing, amazing efforts. We'd also like to give special thanks to the Cleveland Public Library, Case Western Reserve University, and the Western Reserve Historical Society for very graciously providing us with space for many of the pre-conference courses on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday that many of you attended. Okay, One of the things we do at Plenary, one for those of you who are new or for those of you who fade in and out every year, as some of us do, is to present some of our awards at each of the plenaries, and then again Friday night at the awards ceremony. The Society of American Archivists is proud this year to celebrate the accomplishments of members and friends of our archives profession. With 21 recognitions, we spread that across the conference at the 3 different awards presentations. Tomorrow during Plenary 2, the Leadership Plenary, will recognize student achievement. And then tomorrow evening at the awards ceremony, we'll salute innovative projects, superior writing, and some truly remarkable people. This morning, we're going to kick off the awards celebration with 2 specific awards, the naming of 3 new fellows and 1 little surprise award. Okay, so let's begin with the J. Franklin Jameson Archival Advocacy Award. This award honors those who promote greater public awareness and appreciation and the support of archives. This year's recipient is Adrena Eiffel Blackburn, a leading advocate for the preservation of archival records documenting African American congressional history. In 2002, she founded the Cultural Heritage and Multimedia Production from Eiffel Doubleback Global Group and has made it her mission to educate Black lawmakers about records retention policies and to enhance public awareness of the benefits of using these records for educational and historic programs. In addition, Adrena is the director of the A Voice Project, an online library documenting the legislative and political contributions of African Americans serving in Congress. As one supporter noted, Adrena possesses a unique combination of passion, vision, and perseverance, which make her an inspiring colleague, teacher, and advocate. Please join me in honoring Adrena Eiffel Blackburn for her award. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The next award is for the Archives Leadership Institute, affectionately known as ALI, which has developed a program and model that warrants recognition for its exemplary contribution to the archives profession. And it is this year's recipient. I'm sorry, I only had 2 cups of coffee. I need 6. And I apologize for stumbling. They're this year's recipient of the Distinguished Service Award. Funded since 2008 by the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, ALI provides leadership training to archives professionals who want to make an impact in the field. This fall, the annual program will have hosted more than 200 individuals who have honed their skills and expertise in the area of advocacy, media relations, change management, team development, and project management. Alumni frequently contribute to the curriculum, helping the program adapt and grow so it can continue to serve its attendees in the archives profession with distinction. Accepting the Distinguished Service Award on behalf of the Archives Leadership Institute is Rachel Votz of Berea College, which will host ALI in 2016 through 2018. Congratulations to all of you who've been members of this program.
Good morning. I'm Peter Gottlieb, the chair of the Committee on Selection of Fellows. SAA Fellows are those members who have set a standard of excellence and of excellence and of unstinting service to this organization and to the archives profession. By selecting individuals to be fellows, we recognize what they have contributed to the knowledge and practice of archives and to the betterment of SAA, and we express our attitude to them for all that they have done. Before we present our 3 newly elected SAA fellows, I simply want to thank the members of this year's committee for their work on reviewing nominations and deliberating on the qualifications of the candidates. Our committee consists of the 5 most recent SAA presidents, plus 3 SAA fellows appointed by council. In addition to me, the past presidents on the 2014-15 committee are Helen Thibault, Gregor Trinkhaus-Randall, Jackie Dooley, and Danabelle Russell. The 3 members appointed by council are Scott Klein, Bill Landis, and Marjorie Sly. Thanks to all of you for your good work. I'd now like to call on Scott Klein to present the first of our new fellows.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Steadfastness and trustworthiness are two virtues that characterize an exceptional archivist and human being, and they're appropriate descriptors for our newest fellow, Jelaine Chubb. I could stand here and simply recite the impressive list of leadership positions Jelaine has held in national and regional archival associations, or the dozens of presentations she has given during her career. I could map her employment trajectory through a series of ever more responsible and challenging positions to her current job as State Archivist of Texas. The sum of her resume alone makes her worthy of being selected a Fellow of the Society. But what truly distinguishes Jelaine is, to paraphrase Martin Luther King, the content of her character. And nowhere is that character better illustrated than in two vital archival functions called out in all of her nomination letters: advocacy and mentoring. As an advocate for her past and present institutions and for the profession as a whole, Jelaine is described as fierce and unflagging in her pursuit of the archival good. Especially in her positions as state archivist in Ohio and now in Texas, she's excelled in building partnerships with broad constituencies, in developing strategic relationships with elected officials, and explaining the work of the profession to a broader public. Two predecessors in one of her positions commented with a sense of awe and wonder at the success she's had in procuring resources for new staff and programs during times of budgetary retrenchment. The care and nurturing of staff and the general mentoring of young professionals is one of Jelaine's undying passions. She's a powerful advocate for continuing education and professional development for her staff. She's uncanny at turning the workplace into community and motivating staff to become involved in professional associations and, as one letter noted, to reach farther than some of them might have thought possible. I can personally attest to this characterization as Jelaine employs one of my former students. There's no greater archival value than working passionately and effectively to strengthen our future, a task Jelaine engages with seriousness and joy. So please join me in welcoming to the ranks of the SAA Fellows, in the words of her nominators, an archivist of unbounded energy and perpetual motion, the very best of our profession, an archivist, Jelaine Chubb.
There are occasions when one goes outside the box in presentations, and this is one of them. Good morning. My name is Gregor Trinkus Randall, and I have the honor of introducing our next new SAA Distinguished Fellow. I presume that most of you are most familiar with Kathleen Williams as the current Executive Director of the National Historic Publications and Records Commission. However, I'm here to tell you that there is so very much more to Kathleen Williams than her current position. She began her career as the Assistant Archivist at the Corcoran Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. in 1982. She then moved on to become the first archivist of the Houston Museum of Fine Arts in 1984, and while there, she developed an archival program that has served as a model for museums nationwide. In 1994, Kathleen moved on to become the Assistant Supervisory Archivist at the Smithsonian Institution Archives, and subsequently advanced to become the Associate Supervisory Archivist in 1997, and the Archives Division Director in 2002, in charge of archival activities at 18 national museums and 3 cultural centers. In 2004, she joined the NHPRC as Deputy Executive Director and became Executive Director in 2008. In addition to these professional positions, Kathleen Williams has been active in SSA, MARAC, and SAA. In SAA, she's been a member and chair of the Museum Archives section, a member of the Task Force on Sections and Roundtables, membership committee, program committee, a host committee, and the first chair of the Emerging Leaders Award Committee. More telling in some ways are the comments from her supporters. One mentioned that, and I quote, "She became well known for her common sense, no-nonsense, practical, effective grasp of the challenges of developing museum archives in an underfunded and hostile environment." Another noted, "Kathleen Williams has always and reliably been there, pursuing advocacy measures, staying at the forefront of thinking of archivists, listening and talking, engaging SAA and COSA and Nagara members, and learning how to serve all three more effectively." Another stated that Kathleen has had a long and distinguished archival career, marked with impressive achievements in archives administration, writing, service to the archival profession, and culminating in her current position as Executive Director of the NHPRC. And finally, she's been characterized as a thoughtful leader with a keen perception of where the field is, where it could be going, and what kinds of strategies and partnerships would be especially crucial in reaching the optimum outcomes. Please join me in welcoming Kathleen Williams as a new Fellow of the Society of American Archivists.
Who has a copy of the script? Nobody has a copy of the script? Oh. Well, I guess I'll ad-lib then. I'm extremely pleased to present Kathy Marquis as a new Fellow of the Society of American Archivists. Kathy's nominators really emphasize two things: her leadership and advocacy for reference services and reference literacy, which is key to successful delivery of archives services, and her personal characteristics. Among those personal characteristics are, as with Jelaine, a beloved mentor to many, someone who knows how to bring people together to achieve consensus and to keep them happy along the way. She's described as a skilled negotiator. Damn. I thought I wrote this thing really well, too. There were some quotes in it, and I can't remember all the quotes, but they were, much of it was about wonderfully eloquent statements about her, her development of reference literacy programs. In her most recent position as head of reference services, it was fancier than that, at the Laramie County Public Library. Okay, she's an archivist, and she had a very distinguished career as an archivist, but she followed some guy to Laramie and had to find employment in a place where there weren't many archivists who weren't working for that guy. And so she became a public library director of reference services and transformed their program. The most prominent things that she did there that were noted by one of her nominators were developing community outreach programs. Gosh, what were they all? I mean, services to the elderly, bringing services to children, just all kinds of events out in the community, but raising the profile of the library and letting people know what it had to offer and that it was there for its community. She's described as having a wacky sense of humor. That always helps when you're trying to lead people to a conclusion. She has a long and distinguished career in contributing to the Society of American Archivists. She was co-chair of the annual meeting task force a couple of years ago, and her co-chair in that effort, Finette Eaton, I think very sincerely, well, it's not really accurate, but gives Kathy huge credit for having focused the group and helping them achieve so many wonderful outcomes, a lot of which you have seen in
being implemented here in Cleveland, and last year, where were we last year? Washington. So Kathy, people love working with Kathy. She always brings them to a wonderful conclusion, and they have a good time along the way. So please join me in welcoming Kathy Marquis as a new fellow of the Society of American Archivists.
Thank you and welcome to three very, very exceptional members of our society. The Council Exemplary Service Award recognizes a special contribution to the archives profession and especially to SAA. That is not eligible for one of the other 20 awards presented by the Society. It is given at the discretion of Council. This year, Council has discreetly decided to give out 3 awards. There are some really exemplary, exceptional people in our midst. Tomorrow at the 6 p.m. awards ceremony, we'll recognize the Digital Archival Specialist Subcommittee of the Committee on Education, as well as SAA's Committee on Advocacy and Public Policy. But this morning we have one small surprise award. So please, and you are welcome to stand if you wish, join me in saluting Mark Greene. And just to extend the embarrassment for Mark, and the one thing Jackie could not say was that Kathy is an excellent co-conspirator. Whereas Mark Allen Greene has for the past 30 years provided significant and continuous leadership to the Society of American Archivists across its sections, roundtables, committees, and governing bodies, culminating in service as SAA President during 2007 and 8. And whereas Mark Greene has, over the course of his career, made numerous truly impressive contributions to the literary canon of archival science, focusing especially on archival appraisal, but including archival meaning and value, archival ethics, archives management, and arrangement description. And whereas Mark Greene has worked continuously and enthusiastically to mentor, train, and educate a large number of emerging archivists so that they too could achieve the success in archival endeavor. And whereas Mark Greene has consistently and relentlessly demonstrated a vision for the archival profession that has frequently caused him to challenge accepted theory and practice and to champion new approaches and directions, often for the betterment, I would say always for the betterment of the profession. And whereas Mark Greene has, in a too brief career that has been burdened by physical challenges, nevertheless invested himself in this profession to an heroic degree that is admired by so very many of us, his colleagues. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Society of American Archivists recognizes, applauds, and heartily thanks Mark Allen Greene for his outstanding service to SAA and to the archives profession. I'll get you later. There are times when being president is really an epiphanous experience, and it's nice to be able to recognize people who do so many amazing things. Thank you for letting me be here for that. Goal 1 in SAA's ambitious strategic plan focuses on advocating for archives and archivists. Surprise! The ultimate goal is that, and this is true, silly as I act sometimes, it is essential that society values the vital role of archivists and archives. Our Committee on Public Awareness has identified SAA members as our first and key audience as we venture into coordinated public awareness efforts, because the simple truth is that SAA does not have the resources on staff or in its coffers to pay for extensive professional public relations services. But more important, better than any PR agent ever minted, is you, our members. You are our richest resource. You care deeply about what we do. You are who we need to advocate for us. Members, our members, you, our members, can advocate as constituents within your own congressional district. You are members who can interact with your own resource allocators. You are our members who speak to users, community groups, the media, and within our own institutions, communities, and states. Throughout this year of living dangerously for archives, and I know some of you may be getting tired of that, it's almost over this year, but you got another century to go. I have asked you, I have nagged you, I have implored you to step outside your comfort zone and begin to undertake public awareness and advocacy efforts at the local level. In the coming weeks and months, the Committee on Public Awareness, chaired by Peter Gottlieb and soon to be by David Carmichael, and the staff of SAA, with some assistance from paid PR counsel, will be updating and bringing forward on our redesigned website some more resources for you to use in telling the story of why archives matter, whether to your resource allocators or to users or congresspersons. I guess that's what we call those folks now. SAA will be sponsoring an Ask an Archivist Day again this year on October 1st. This time around, it will be early in the month. We need for you to be engaged in this social media effort to build on the excellent participation rate in 2014. Only by activating our members as the mediums will SAA have the critical mass that we really need to move the needle on public awareness. So if you're all the mediums, which is sort of spiritual, we think the overall message is that archives change lives, and I truly believe archives change lives because they enrich, they connect, they empower, and truly, archives have even saved lives. So Archives Change Lives is the theme of the campaign we're launching at this conference. And we are going to show you a video that has been prepared for that campaign.
What I love about being an archivist is being able to hear the voices of people from the past, people from a wide variety of perspectives, people whose lives I could never have an experience of. Archives is just this incredibly human experience.
I've seen examples over and over again where people looking for information were connected with something and you saw their eyes pop open. You saw a really tangible realization that they had not only answered a question that was looming at the front of their minds, but they had found sort of a touchstone into almost a new reality that they were not aware had existed before.
That's why I'm an archivist. To me, they change lives. Archives change lives.
Archival materials are really the things that ground us in our culture. They provide connecting points that link us to our history.
One of our main duties is to preserve the records that are in our custody, and in those records are the stories, the histories, the legacy of people.
Archives take lives and they really make them legacies, and that can be interpreted in a number of ways. But because they're there and these records have been preserved, then they're there for future generations to discover what somebody accomplished. So I often focus on how we preserve lives within our collections.
And if they aren't preserved, that information, that history is lost for generations to come.
What I hope that my colleagues and I will all be able to do together is to explain to people in clear, compelling language why we think archives matter, why what we do is valuable.
I would like for members of SAA to be proactive in their own communities, to advocate on behalf of the profession, to really take the opportunity to teach their families, friends, neighbors about what they do and why it matters.
There are a lot of little ways that you can be promoting archives and archivists while you're doing your daily work. If you are able to promote your collections, why not promote the work that you're doing too behind the collections? People love to see the behind the scenes and know what's going on.
I love archives. I love what I do. I want people to understand the importance of what we do because it is the foundational information for this society.
And that is probably the only time you will see Stephen Booth or I in plain, bland clothing for the camera. We have gone a long way for you. Okay, so the campaign is directed at you, our own members, right now, because we're relying on you, every one of you out there, to tell the stories about how archives change lives and bring public awareness and bring our public awareness initiative to life. We have a StoryCorps booth on site at this meeting. If you haven't seen it, down at the end of the hall, go talk to the lovely gentlemen down there who are quite calm, which is a change for me. There are 16 pairs of archivists who will be talking about what their work is, why they think archives and archivists matter. We'll mine those conversations for stories that will be posted on our website that you can use as a basis for developing your own. And StoryCorps has that fabulous app where you can go out and you can make the stories yourselves. A critical mass of these stories will enable us to develop a public destination on our website that really begins to tell the stories of archives and archivists in very compelling ways. Our goal is to motivate you to be willing to speak up on behalf of the profession and to provide you with the resources and tools that will help you take this on. Now, the plenary speakers today are near and dear to my heart because they're going to talk about storytelling, and I know that that is sort of the thing these days, but it is the most essential way we transmit knowledge in our culture. Stories change lives. Stories are the way we change lives, and they are not fiction. Stories can simply be the very good way we tell the truth to each other. So this morning we've invited two speakers who will address the issue of several facets of storytelling. I'm going to introduce both of these gentlemen to you and then let them take over and share with you some of the amazing things they know and things they have done. Tom Owen will speak first. Tom is a vice president. They sometimes call them destinologists, which I'm really envious of. I love that term. He's the vice president of PGAV Destinations, which I just bumped into as a company. They do a piece of their website called Storytelling. It Can Change Your Mind, and I encourage you to go look at it. PGAV is a company that works with museums and cultural heritage organizations to design exhibits, experiences that create enduring memories in the minds of their patrons, not just get them in and pay their fee, but really make people connect with the place. PGAV's work is informed by the power of storytelling, and they have the neuroscience to prove it. It is just amazing what they know and what they do. Tom notes that stories about our own experience can actually shape someone else's mind, planting ideas, thoughts, and emotions. Stories might, in fact, be the only way to turn our experience into someone else's, and Tom will be the first speaker. Following him will be Daniel Horowitz Garcia, Daniel is the Atlanta Regional Manager for StoryCorps, which is, as I hope many of you know, a national project to instruct and inspire people to record each other's stories in sound. And if some of you are like me, there are times you have to pull off the road because those stories will bring you to tears on NPR. He has worked for 20 years in nonprofits in the South, organizing around labor, environmental and criminal justice, and anti-poverty issues. In addition, Daniel, who happens to hold a master's degree in history from Georgia State, has worked as a popular educator using history and historical research in educational projects with trade unions and anti-poverty organizations around the country. Please welcome our colleagues and what I hope will be our new best friends, first Tom and then Daniel. Thank you.
I'm Daniel. I'm not Tom. Unless you don't like my speech, then I am Tom. Good God, there are a lot of people here. So I'm actually quite nervous. I've been nervous for a couple of days, and I've done a lot of public speaking, so it's not normal for me to be nervous. But I'm a historian by training and inclination, and you're archivists, so it's like you're my cousins. You know, it's like I'm doing a speech to like 1,000 cousins, family members, and I'm Puerto Rican, so we call this Christmas, basically. So that's you know, be nice to me. We're family. My name's Daniel. Again, not Tom. He's a really nice guy. He's just going after me. And I'm the regional manager at StoryCorps Atlanta. There are 3 story booths around the country, and I'm the one in the South. And I've used, I'm actually older than I look, and I need bifocals, but I won't get them. So I can't see you now. We'll talk about that later if you want. Anyway, I'm a historian by training. I've used oral history in my work, I've because of my research field, my research focus is race, gender, and social movement, and in the late 20th century South. And frankly, nobody studies that much anymore. It's like 1968, we're done, we're going to New York now. So I had to use oral history. But my job today isn't to give you tips about being a historian or using oral history necessarily. It's really to talk to you about, well, to move you emotionally towards engaging others via storytelling. So in short, I'm from StoryCorps, and I'm here to make you cry. So most of my professional work actually has been as an organizer, a labor organizer, a community organizer in different ways. And I believe that experience, which frankly is not very separated from my work as a historian, but my experience as an organizer, I think, will help us a bit in understanding storytelling, and I believe it will help us better understand how archives change lives. Thank you. There are 2 buttons on this, and how much you want to bet I mess this up? Okay, so the reason I talk about that is about my organizing experience is as an organizing campaign, regardless of what it is, whether it's a political campaign or electoral campaign or however you want to define it, is first and foremost about establishing a new narrative, and whoever or whatever does that first usually wins the campaign, right? So as an organizer or former organizer and a historian, I'm here to tell you that no narrative is fixed, that all narratives change, and when they do, amazing things can happen. Like that. Okay. I messed it up on the first slide. Okay. So I'd like to begin by playing a clip because, again, I'm StoryCorps. This is Faye Tenenbaum and Ann Lassoff, and they came to the story booth in May of this year. And this is a conversation between 2 sisters. They're 92 and 93 years old. And this conversation was different. Dave, could you play the audio,
You've never
please?
been to this place. You're living in Atlanta all these years, and you've never been any place in Atlanta.
No, I don't go to museums. You like museums. I know they don't get enough publicity, this thing.
They do get a lot of publicity, but you don't read the paper, so you don't know.
So what am I supposed to do?
I don't know. It's your problem. This is something. How are you going to tell people? Well, we sat down, and a nice gentleman was there, and we were talking. And they'll say, well, you talk all the time. What did you have to talk about?
Oh, he should only know.
I don't know what I'm doing here.
And there was a schlep here. Susan took us here. She's wasting a day taking us. Yeah. My sister would like to go to the varsity now.
So Anne said, I don't know what I'm doing here 4 times in this interview. They spent 5 minutes of talking about their experience, of talking to other people about their experience. And I was the facilitator for this. I couldn't get them to stop. It took me 10 minutes. At one point I said, okay, we're done. And they went on for another 2 minutes. And so this was just a word salad of an interview that went on for 45 minutes. And at the end, I gave them the release forms. And I told Anne, this is going to happen a lot. But I told Anne their interview would be in the Library of Congress. And she started to cry. Now, she had worked as a writer for decades, a published writer for decades. She gave birth to 3 children. She had 1 grandchild. She had a nephew who was killed in the day trader shootings in Atlanta 10 years ago. But the idea that she was going to be in the Library of Congress made her cry. And I'd like to spend some time this morning talking about why that is. So first, for those who don't know, StoryCorps. StoryCorps was founded in 2003. We have more than 60,000 interviews with more than 100,000 people, and a collection that's archived at the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. It encompasses more than 3 terabytes of data. And the more I say 3 terabytes, the less impressive it gets. Apparently, like everybody has terabytes, but that's a lot of data. It really is. So the StoryCorps process is a little different, and you could read about that up there. And for those of you experienced, as you know, it's folks talking to each other. Now, StoryCorps Atlanta opened in 2009, and since then, our small staff has recorded more than 5,000 stories with about 8,000 people, give or take. And people come from all across Atlanta, all across Georgia, all across the South in order to share their stories and record their interviews. In Atlanta, we record about 700 stories a year. Half of the interviews come from community outreach. That's through partnerships with community organizations. So really, I think I'm a great historian. I've done great research, but I was really hired for my community outreach background. And that outreach is important because it gets to something interesting. People in the middle of building something, talking about their passion is interesting. So you as archivists talking to other people about what you're passionate about is interesting. Trust me on this. So without community outreach, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And when that happens, we get some amazing, amazing interviews. And this is one I'd like to play. This is Taryn Jordan and Cecilia or Ceci Science. Dave, could you play the audio, please?
I remember feeling just so excited. It's like eating the perfect egg.
Oh, God.
You know? It was just perfection, and I felt so complete. And I want to like align it with like safety too, because an egg is like super cheap, and I know that I can always afford an egg, which means that I always have just a little bit of access to something pleasurable. And I think by having you in my life, I always know it's going to be amazing and beautiful. You are my egg. So maybe this is completely self-interested, but tell me when you first realized you loved me.
I think I realized that when I became really worried about when you came out to your parents. We were in Phoenix together, and you were really sick. And I didn't know at the time, like, I now know that you get extremely sick when you're, like, extremely stressed out. And, like, I was trying to get you all the things that would, you know, make you feel better. And you were still insistent upon going to go see your parents and make the 6-hour drive. I tried to tell you no, like you shouldn't go, but you were, of course, hard set on it and had made up your mind that you were gonna go. And I was really worried about you, and I don't think you checked in with me. So that was like a part of it. Another part of it was when you told me when you came out to your parents and how painful that was, and like that you went and you were sitting in the parking lot of Walmart and you called me and you were just crying. And I just want to make it feel better. And I was in Phoenix, I couldn't do anything. You know, your parents took it so hard. And I think those two instances really marked it really well for me in terms of just like how I felt and what I wanted to do for you. And then like just the impotence of not being able to do anything because I wasn't physically there. So yeah.
I have one thing I want to make sure I tell you in this conversation is that when I figured out my sexuality, that I wanted to be in relationship with women, about I think a year and a half before you and I got together, my roommate Matt was like, when are you going to tell your parents? When are you going to tell your parents? And I was like, first of all, I need to get in a relationship first before it becomes real. But I always told him that I would tell my parents when I met someone that was worth it. And as painful as that situation was, as terrible as it was, I wouldn't change a thing. I have no regrets. That was important for me because I loved you and I knew that you were going to be my family.
So Taryn and Ceci are originally from Arizona, and they have worked on truly groundbreaking campaigns against mass deportations on immigration and against police violence. And they were recruited in the booth to talk about their relationship. Ceci asked Taryn, and Taryn was answering that question about, remember the first time she heard Ceci say, I love you to her. And so I think that, which seems like a very, and it is, it's a very intimate conversation, it's a very intimate moment, but I think it's also a bit of our lesson for today. Because after this, Ceci and Taryn are really good friends of mine, and I had conversations with Ceci about what this experience meant to her, and she made it quite clear that her and Taryn took this recording very seriously. In her words, quote, "We are queer women of color. We have as much right to be part of history as anyone else." So clearly, Ceci's thinking about the conversation in historical terms, right? She felt she had the right to be recorded alongside other people, but notice that her statement isn't about she has the right to be in the archive. She goes beyond that. She has a right to be part of history, right? Tara and Ceci's personal relationship was and is being built through their political work. They both know that people can learn from their experience. They don't just want to seek a usable past, they want to be a usable past. We don't have to explain the importance of archives to them. They know that. They know that what you do is important. They get it. They want to know how their experience is going to be used by other people. So it isn't enough to have a recording. It has to be used. They want their story to connect to other people's story, right? So lesson 2, connect with people. So going back to Anne and Faye, Anne's story was no longer going to be just about Anne. It was now going to be part of the country's when it became part of the Library of Congress. Tara and Ceci know people could use their stories. They don't know exactly how, though, right? And that's where you connect. That's where you connect their story to everybody else's story. When people ask you about what you do, they don't want to hear about content DM, right? Sorry. Tell them how their life is the story of this country right now. Better yet, show them. Show them by connecting what they tell you with what you do. Anne cried because being in the archives was as far as she could see. She never saw herself as being part of the historical record until that recording. But Taryn and Ceci demand more. You can deliver on both counts. So, I'm sure you've seen this slogan before, be a voice for the voiceless. I hate this slogan, right? People have a voice. They don't need you to talk for them. They need you to help other people hear them, right? Anne was happy to just be part of the collection. Maybe she thought it was a given that if her story was in the Library of Congress, someone would listen to it sometime. Maybe she was emotionally moved about the potential of someone listening to it. But I learned as an organizer that potential energy isn't really potential unless it has a plan. As archivists, you put people's lives in context. Taryn and Ceci know their story is part of this country's story. They have a voice and they use it. They need to struggle to make sure it's heard, that their voice is heard. They need other folks to develop the right ears. When you provide context, you do that. Your work can provide an ear to the earless. People fall in love and they struggle. They struggle while they're in love and they love while they're in struggle. You, 30 years from now, will people know what it meant for a black woman and a Latina immigrant to fall in love while fighting police brutality and mass deportations? Yes, if you help them understand. It's a struggle to be remembered. And you help people in that struggle. Anne knows that, Taryn and Ceci know that. I know that because I'm crying up here like a baby. But I have a certificate in women's studies. I'm totally okay with this. Well, the fact is, you have to articulate. You have to articulate the context. You have to articulate what you do in big terms. That's the story. That's not just your story, that's America's story. That's what I want to hear when I ask you what you do. I want to know your plan for releasing the potential energy inside the archives you maintain. So our final lesson. Be the public's egg. Your story keeps other people's stories alive. One way you help and need to help is by making sure that things like archives continue to exist. You know, you must advocate for the resources you need. And you do that by telling your story and connecting to other people's. You have to tell people what you do. And you have to do it in a way that people really want to listen to you. So what do archives do? What do? You help people in their struggle to be remembered. Go out, be the public's egg. Make yourself and your work accessible to people. Make them want to be a part of it. Make your work delicious. Make them want to continue to be a part of it. Make your work luscious. Make it accessible. Go out and change some lives. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Owen, and I agree with Daniel. It's a big crowd. Pardon me a second. This is for my archive. So I don't like doing selfies, but I like doing this. Oops, one more. Didn't like that one. There we go. So that's what it looks like from up here. There's going to be video to show what it looks like looking back at me. So turn off my phone. That's good. So I wanted to start today with a story of my own. Space Shuttle Atlantis rests on Launch Complex 39A, ready to unleash enough thrust to lift the 6 million pounds of spaceship cargo and fuel off the pad and through the atmosphere to dock with the International Space Station. STS-135, the final mission of the Space Shuttle program, the final mission of Atlantis, one of only 3 remaining space-flown orbiters. Memories of Challenger and Columbia remind us that spaceflight is anything but certain. I took this photo. The folks in charge of the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex had hired us to design a museum for Atlantis, the only orbiter NASA would keep at its own facility. I was the creative lead for the project, and my responsibilities and privileges with that role included acting as the executive producer for the film crews capturing the final days of the shuttle program. We needed footage in 4K resolution to have the image quality we wanted for the stories we wanted to tell. The gift shop at the visitor complex sells mugs and t-shirts with this quote from Gene Kranz, the famous Apollo flight director: "Failure is not an option." That feeling kept me on edge as I worked with the crews to get through security, check our gear, get to our shooting positions, and wait. We had been working for weeks capturing footage of mission preparation and launches and landings of STS-133 and 134. But Atlantis was our orbiter, and this was our only shot. No retakes. When NASA launched the shuttle to rendezvous with the International Space Station, the launch window only lasted 10 minutes because ISS is traveling around the Earth every 90 minutes, 17,000 miles an hour. It's up there right now, but when they launched, they had to make sure they could hit it. Weather had already caused previous attempts to be scrubbed. The day before launch had severe storms and a huge front moving through. I was already making plans to reschedule the shoot and make flight arrangements home. I had taken my son David with me, and a scrub would mean delay by 2 weeks, so he would miss it. The film crews work on a daily rate and have to be notified the night before if we're going to shoot. The crew included 4 cinematographers, 4 assistants, sound grips, plus large format cameras and equipment. It cost $50,000 a day. And my budget was almost spent. We were at a critical time in the project planning process, and sticking to the shooting budget had implications about our overall ability to accurately estimate costs. If I called the crew and the mission was scrubbed, I had just thrown away $50,000. But if I didn't call the crew and missed the launch, severe storms continued into the night, some of the most amazing lightning shows I can remember. As far as I can see, up and down the coast, because you see the launch pads are right next to the beach. I didn't know that till I started working down there. But just before midnight, the heavens seemed to open up to receive Atlantis. The front dissipated, and we got the word NASA was fueling. Time to give the crew the go-ahead. We would meet at 3 a.m. for security clearance. Everything went great. I took the crews to the top of the vehicle assembly building, 500 feet tall with a direct view of the launch pad. We had one camera shooting wide and another with a tighter shot to track Atlantis as she rose out of sight. I heard a whoomp, whoomp, whoomp and saw a helicopter as it came around the corner of the VAB. Below us, how often are you above a helicopter? Escorting the crew to the pad in the Astrovan. I still had 2 hours before launch, so I left the crew on the VAB and headed to the press area, where I had 2 other teams shooting from ground level. By the time I arrived, they were ready. The weather had cleared, still a little cloudy and not the best light for video, but okay, no more threat of weather. So we waited, nervously. To pass the time, we did impromptu interviews. Lots of former astronauts were hanging around too. Fatigue is starting to set in from no sleep. I wondered how David was doing. He was supposed to be with friends at the viewing site. The countdown had been going on for hours, but it isn't really continual. The final countdown begins at T-minus 10 minutes, and that time had come. I feel the excitement building all around me as the loudspeaker blasts the time. T-minus 7 minutes, all systems go. T-minus 3 minutes, all traffic clear. T-minus 1 minute, I think it's really going to happen. Well, why did it stop at 31? I asked aloud to anyone as the announcer said, "We have a hold on countdown." I have trouble sorting out the mixture of dread and disappointment and fear and confusion I felt at that moment. How much time left in the window? 90 seconds, or it scrubs. This brought me back into focus. 60 seconds goes by. 70. 80. With only 3 seconds left in the window, resume countdown. "Check your cameras," I yelled to the crew. Go on to the next image, please. I actually missed most of the final words as I tried to check the camera shot and etch the image in my personal memory. I took this shot too. I've made friends with several astronauts, and as Atlantis disappeared into the clouds, I worried for the safety of the crew. But selfishly, I worried about our spaceship returning in one piece so we could create our museum. Fast forward to summer 2012. The Space Shuttle Atlantis attraction opened at Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. Our team designed the entire guest experience, exhibits, graphics, architecture, media experiences, which earned numerous awards. We were understandably proud of our work and took our entire team to see it. Space Shuttle Atlantis is a perfect example of our work with museums, history museums, science museums, corporate visitor centers, zoos, aquariums, all kinds of things, all these destinations that Kathleen referred to. And we start with strategic planning and go through final design and art direction. But during the process, we pored over the NASA archives and interviewed a lot of people to mine for stories to tell in the museum, including on-camera interviews of over 80 NASA employees or program contractors, so they could tell their story of designing, building, and servicing the vehicles. So why did we publish a book on storytelling? Space Shuttle Atlantis is a very special project, but we have always told stories as part of our work. A few years ago, we realized we weren't really very good at talking about storytelling to each other, to new employees, or to our clients. Maybe you've had a similar situation where you do something all the time, but when you try to talk about it, you find that you struggle. Anyway, we made a conscious decision to create a storytelling culture within our firm, and this book came out of that decision. Once we started talking about it, we also realized something else. We believed storytelling was the most powerful way to communicate, but we didn't really know why. But we were really lucky in our timing, because in recent years, many researchers had been digging into that very question. Scientists were able to measure brain activity and found that information conveyed in bullet points or journalistic style registered in limited areas of the brain, but stories, narrative stories, activated many parts of the brain. In fact, a well-told story causes the reader or listener to mirror the feelings and brain activity of the protagonist in the story. If we can go on to the next picture, please. Remember how it felt to walk in her shoes? Her fear? Her love for Atticus and her brother? I picked this example because it works for so many people. This kind of emotionally powerful story is called a narrative story. Rule number 1, a narrative story must have a protagonist. And for today's story, that would be me. I'm the one standing here feeling not so comfortable speaking to such a large crowd, having asked myself multiple times as I spend nights and weekends thinking about this talk and writing it, why do I do this to myself? this isn't just rhetorical. I really want to know why I do this to myself. So I came up with two theories, really two halves of one theory. I call the first one my personal work mission. I've always felt a deep desire, maybe an addiction, to do something worthwhile, something that helps people to fulfill my sense of responsibility. To whom much is given, much is expected. I call the second part of the theory behind the scenes. I earned a BFA in theater arts and had worked on community and high school productions before that, mostly working on lighting, sound, set design, and costume design. I enjoy the creativity of making things with my hands and also the adrenaline of the curtain opening with the work of our team on stage, but not with me on stage. My work with museums combines these two notions, my personal work mission and behind the scenes. You see, I don't make the scientific discovery, but I help tell the story of it in a museum so others get it. I don't preserve the history or the documents, but I help bring the stories to life so museum visitors can find relevance. So why am I on stage today? I think I said yes because most of you would describe yourselves as behind-the-scenes people. Maybe we have something in common. Maybe I have something worthwhile to offer. Which brings me to the second rule of narrative storytelling. Know something about your audience. So once I agreed to speak today, again, why do I do this to myself? I decided I better invest some time learning about archivists. So I started making calls to people I know in museums, and I started hearing things like, archivists don't think of themselves as storytellers. Archivists tend to be introverts. Storytelling is for researchers and curators and other people. Archivists preserve and provide access. So I'm a little worried. Kathleen had received a copy of our book and contacted us about speaking. I still remember her words from our first conversation. We need to empower archivists to talk about the heart rather than the tasks, to convey why archives matter, to tell their own stories, to change public opinion. And over here I'm getting, archivists may be tough to inspire. Oh boy. But I kept at it, and I felt a little more hopeful when I heard, archivists make it last longer. Be nice to archivists or they will erase your story. Archivists put it where the sun don't shine. Kimberly-Clark should sponsor archivists because their answer to most questions is, depends. It was the first time I smiled since I agreed to be here. So I kept going, and I learned archivists help people. Archivists have clients they serve, professional researchers, family researchers, teachers, senior management of their organizations. Archivists provide the historical context for decisions made today. Organization is more than keeping things in the right place. It's about making the materials accessible when people need them. Archivists respond to public demand by featuring the most popular archives. By now, my perception of archivists has changed. At first, I heard the job of the archivist is to collect, but then I'm learning that archivists have lots of great stories to tell. Archivists make choices. We can't keep everything. Now that has story potential. How do you choose? Archivists save the past and preserve the present for the future. There's an epic story in that sentence. Then comes the bombshell. Archivists already tell stories in the form of articles and newsletters and with each other. I like this story from Michael Everman about archivists helping people. Michael is from the local records program of the Missouri State Archives, St. Louis Carnahan Courthouse. I'm from St. Louis, so I reached out to Michael. So I'm going to share his story with you. Pat, on schedule for your researcher on Thursday? Michael. He's asking for the probate files from 1804 to 1875, basically the extent of our collection. As long as I can avoid too many interruptions, I should be okay. I had my head down working, concentrating when Pat tapped my shoulder. What? I said, a little more impatiently than I meant to. She motioned toward the front desk. A man stood there quietly with a small piece of paper in his hand and uncertainty on his face. I had no idea how long he had been standing there, and with my head still in my project and resenting the interruption, I walked out of my office and toward him. May I help you? I said, still not as friendly as it could have been. He held up the slip of paper and said, I went to the courthouse and they sent me here. By now, I was starting to see him as a person and not so much of an interruption. He wore glasses, had white hair and a mustache, probably in his 70s. He spoke softly. I was hoping to find out about my great-grandmother's funeral. The piece of paper had her name and the date of her death, so I asked him to sit down, and I went into the archives to retrieve the document. Knowing I was on a deadline, Pat helped me find it, and fortunately, we had the actual paper probate estate case file for his great-grandmother. I opened the file and laid it on the table. You can look through it for yourself if you want to, and he nodded appreciation. I returned to my desk, but was able to watch the research area through the window. The man sat quietly and turned the pages slowly. I tried to get my head back into my project, but now it seemed like the interruption. The gentleman turned toward me and, without saying a word, asked for help with his eyes. I explained various official documents like the estate settlement list of heirs, the inventory of personal property and real estate, and various lists of assets, securities, etc. that had been produced by the estate administrator in settling out the accounts and bills. At the back part of the folder, he discovered documents dealing with the final days of medical care for his great-grandmother and the expenses and logistics of her funeral, payments or signatures for the number of carriages and teams of horses for the funeral, casket cost, clothing, gloves for the deceased, opening and closing of the grave, things like that. He sighed and leaned into his hands. When he looked up, I could see tears coming down his cheeks. He took off his glasses and he pointed with the earpiece to the document and said, "She signed right there. That's my grandmother's signature. I've never seen that before." He whuffed a couple more times and then we asked if we could make copies. When I copied the selected documents, including the one with his grandmother's signature, he sat shaking his head, holding both sides of the estate folder open. I gave him his copies and he stood up to walk out. All we could do, no, do you want any more records, I asked? No, I found what I was looking for, he said as he shook my hand and Pat's hand. In a halting, choking whisper, he said, "Thank you for helping me find this. That was my grandmother." He turned and walked out. So all we could do was catch our breath and agree the moment had made our whole week worthwhile. So remember how I call myself a behind-the-scenes guy? So I like behind-the-scenes stories, like this one from Christine Engel at the Cincinnati Museum Center. So Christine, I got a call one day in late 2011 from Stephanie in Waterford, Virginia. Stephanie, my ancestors were among the early settlers in Cincinnati. I have some letters and photographs I want to show you. Christine, we get a lot of calls from people with items to donate, but this one sounded more interesting than most. Stephanie sent scans of a couple of items. "You need to see this," says Christine to her colleague, looking at one of the letters. "The whole country around the town is one great cemetery. The air is heavy with the effluvia of the dead," wrote Surgeon Jacob Ebersol, 19th Indiana, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, July 12, 1863, in a letter to his wife. First surgeon of the 19th Indiana Volunteers, part of the infamous Iron Brigade, Ebersol garnered distinction during the war, especially at Gettysburg, where he had charge of the brigade and division's hospital. During this time, he altered the standard procedure for amputations by making the cut at the joint, which afforded greater mobility to the wounded soldiers fitted with prosthetics. His amputation methods were adopted by field surgeons and became the standard for decades to come. Christine, we would be honored to have your letters and pictures in our collection. We made arrangements and I met her at our front door with a cart about a month later. As I dug into it, I decided I would personally arrange and describe this collection, something I don't always have time to do as archives manager. But this was special. Ebersol was devoted to his wife and wrote her almost daily. "Will you be able to put it in an exhibit?" Stephanie asked. Many donors ask this of us, but we can't display everything. Luckily, we were developing an exhibit to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, so we had a great opportunity to use it, plus share much of it online. "Thank you for preserving the letters and letting people see them. I would hate to see them stored away in a closet," Stephanie wrote. Christine, before Stephanie called, I had no idea these letters existed, and out of the blue, a treasure finds us. It's exciting to think what might happen today. So now I'm starting to get it. Archivists have a sense of humor. They have great stories to tell, and whether they admit it or not, they already tell them. So maybe the best way for me to help, and remember, I have this help addiction, isn't about convincing you to tell stories, but maybe how to tell them better. So to become an archivist, many of you got education and training, and probably not just once, but ongoing. Telling stories well also requires education, training, and practice. Not just once, but ongoing. You can learn rules and narrative structure for written and spoken stories. I already mentioned the first two rules. Narrative stories have a protagonist. Know your audience. Narrative stories must have a protagonist because stories are about people. The protagonist wants something, and the story is about them trying to get it. Drama comes from the challenges they face along the way. And because I want to constantly improve my storytelling skills, I recently attended a storytelling workshop taught by Andy Goodman. And my last slide will include some contact information for him. Andy described the structure of narrative stories in 3 acts, which fits well with my theater background. Act 1 introduces the protagonist, the world she lives in, and the moment that something happens. We learn who she is and what she wants in Act 1. In Act 2, she encounters the obstacles preventing her from getting what she wants. The story resolves in Act 3. She may get what she wants, but she has also been changed in the process. I spoke with Gerald Hirsch from the State Historical Society of Missouri and came away with 3 essential stories for archivists to tell. The items in my archive are important because. Your collection belongs in our archive because. Our archive should receive resources because. Today I have told you my story about what I do and why I do it, and why I care enough to step out of my comfort zone to stand in front of such a large audience. How I let fear motivate me to prepare. Why I cared enough to borrow my daughter's karaoke machine to practice with a microphone. You have great stories to tell. You believe in what you do. Why wouldn't you put the power of narrative storytelling to work? Failure is not an option. I suspect most of you know the Ernest Hemingway 6-word story challenge. He bet his fellow writers he could write a great story in 6 words. Now I want you to think about your work and why archives matter. So I talked Nancy into putting some index cards on the chair, and I want you to write your own 6-word story. Why archives matter, why your archive, why you do what you do. You can put your name on it if you want to, but don't have to, but we're going to invite you to turn those in as you're leaving. And Nancy, who's a glutton for punishment, has agreed to collect them and digitize them as an archival record of our event today. Remember this as a first step in telling your story and telling it better. We have limited time today, but if you want to learn more about storytelling and telling your story better, I suggest some resources on this slide. If you want a copy of our storytelling book, you can get it on our website in a PDF form. I also want to thank the archivists that took time out of their busy schedules to educate me. Finally, one more rule of storytelling. Stories end. Thank you.
My incredible gratitude to Tom and Daniel for doing everything and 10 times more than I had hoped for. Daniel, I cry all the time, so we can just have a sob fest in the corner. I used to never cry, and it took a lot to learn how to do it. It is a great art and a great heart that will make it happen. So thank you both for giving us a really important perspective on what we need to do, and that, as Tom said, we do have the stories. We have many ways to go. I hope you'll fill out those cards, and I hope in the next days, you will, as you go through a wide variety of sessions, you will think about the stories, that you will take the time to turn to the person next to you, behind you, or around you. At the reception tonight, at the plenary tomorrow, I hope you all come, at other parts of the meeting, please take that extra step to reach out and tell your stories. This is a compassionate crowd. It's much easier to talk to each other first and sort of get a little practice at telling those stories. So take this opportunity to give the great riches that you have within you and within your archives, within your experiences as an archivist, to each other so that we can better go forward and tell people how archives do change lives, how the world relies on and needs the compassion, the understanding, and the truths that sit within our repositories, and give each other the chance to learn better how to be good storytellers, because in fact that's what we are. We do hold the stories and we can give them out. I hope you have a fabulous time over the next several days. I hope you will take time to congratulate our awardees and to talk to each other about the incredible resources in archives, and go fill out those index cards, and please turn them in. We would love to share your stories with each other. Thank you, and welcome again to Cleveland. Let's go out there and make it happen.
Like a fool, I went